Good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you are in the world. I'm calling in this morning from Guatemala City. My name is Greg D'Alessandro. I'll be doing my best Brian Morales interpretation this morning. And this is the Global Coalition to Address Synthetic Drug Threats, session 1.1 for the West, August 13th, 2024. I'm pleased to share with you some administrative announcements as we kick off the final sub-working group session of the Global Coalition Year 1. Could I ask that we go to slide 2? If somebody doesn't have that, I will pull it up, but I'll just continue going. I would like to begin by thanking our co-chairs, and that's Devon Naker, Henning Root, and Andrew Cunningham, for all their work over the past 11 months. It has been a quite intensive program, and we are grateful for their dedication. I also would like to thank our international organization coordinators, Asma Fakhri and Connor Crean. They have been great collaborators over all of these months, and we are very grateful for all of their support across the coalition, including helping us identify speakers, organize these calls, and advance the coalition's work. Today's theme for the coalition are those of evaluation. Oh, thank you. Could you go to slide 2? Perfect. Thank you so much. Today's theme for the coalition are those of evaluation and transition or sustainability. Well, what do I mean? Now that we are coming to the close of the first year of the coalition, given the diverse membership of the coalition, we need to look at how we transition to a new phase that is more manageable and easier to organize. We come from so many different backgrounds, so many different professions, that to really start make progress at the next phase of the coalition, we need to find a way that we can manage the work better. I think in the second year, our success will be measured very specifically by the outcomes of the actions and the initiatives that we are going to undertake. So I'll discuss that in just a moment. Please go to slide 3. Can we go to the, yes, there we go. First, I want to cover some of our accomplishments to highlight just how far we have come over these past 11 months. The ministerial meeting that launched the coalition took place on July 7th, 2023. It seems very long ago now, and it demonstrated a high-level political commitment to address synthetic drug threats that was a call to action by the top leaderships of our countries. That high-level interest really instilled in us a sense of urgency, a focus that has led to the very productive meetings that we have held over the last 11 months. The slide outlines some of these accomplishments. We were able to develop a network of over 1,600 government representatives from 158 countries. We are all united with this common purpose to find practical solutions to address these threats that are manifested by synthetic drugs. In total, by the end of the September sessions, we will have engaged in 148 hours of virtual meetings with interpretation over the past year to understand the problem, to exchange experiences, and to share opportunities and discuss new ideas. In May, we worked together to identify 68 recommendations across all of the sub-working groups. We had in-person meetings with co-chairs in Italy for Working Group 2 and from Greece with all of the other working groups. And these working group meetings, we discussed the various priority initiatives. There was a realization from those meetings that this issue is going to require continued and intensified cooperation, as well as funding and resources for many years to come. This is not something that is an acute issue that is solved easily. It is a chronic issue that is getting worse, that requires the attention of the international community and new responses, new ways, and new strategies of addressing that drug phenomenon. To summarize this slide, what we have done this year, we have focused on building the car, building our infrastructure. But now comes the time to start utilizing it. We need to start test driving, and we are ready to start moving forward in these initiatives. It has taken a year, but it is the scope, the intensity of our work, the extensive nature of the subjects that we have covered that really did require so much intensity that the nearly 150 hours of these Zoom calls. I really want to once again thank sincerely all of your dedication, participation, and endurance for what I know was a lot of time given everyone's busy schedules. But it was a meaningful exercise, and we very much appreciate your collaboration. Next slide, please. There should be more if you keep going. Thank you. We have established new networks as a result of the coalition. On the health side, developing the Global Recovery Network, the Global Women's Network, and the International Consortium for Alternatives to Incarceration, or ICATI, to help move people from the criminal justice system into community-based treatment services. And we have a new network that will be coming in the future, INLAD, the International Network for Legislation on Drugs, to help fill some of the legislative gaps we are finding. Overall, we also have been raising awareness of initiatives, 120 initiatives that have been promoted by international organizations. This is a great library, a great resource that the international organizations, 15 of them, have provided us. It includes everything from intelligence and information sharing platforms to training programs and capacity building opportunities. We have seen that coalition participants have used these initiative pages that we have on our website to express interest to the international organizations in these activities. I would also like to raise the issue of donors, and here I will mention INL, have referred to these for developing funding support packages for the coming year. We are looking specifically at about 30 initiatives that we want support from, that many of the initiatives for the coming year, and have really oriented our programming in INL at the U.S. Department of State to support global coalition initiatives, almost exclusively for this coming year. Could I have the next slide, please? So what is left to accomplish? As I have mentioned, we have built the car, now we need to drive it. We need to operation, my apologies, it's a tongue twister, operationalize the actions and initiatives that we have been discussing, both in the recommendations as well as the initiatives page, as well as through presentations we have been listening to over the past months. There are 3 lines of effort we would like to propose going forward in the coalition after September. First, collective meetings. First is to look at having collective meetings or groupings of coalition partners. One that we are looking at is at a donors conference, the first of which will be organized by UNODC for donor states to be able to coordinate the assistance that they are already providing and to take stock of additional needs that the international community is facing, so we are aware of what we're contributing and what needs yet to be contributed. Second, we are considering a thought leaders conference. This idea would bring together academia, think tanks, but also policymakers, bringing research, policy, and practice together and helping look at a forecast of where the field is going, where synthetic drugs may pose a greater risk in the future, what the patterns are looking like so we can try to undermine and address some of those challenges that we find internationally. So that is something that we are looking at. We sort of pushed that off as an activity for next year. And we can think of other meetings where the coalition may come together. We do not envision that we will continue to have these monthly meetings, but we can have specific meetings at specific times, and we look forward to your feedback in terms of recommendations. Secondly, regional meetings. We are also considering regional meetings organized by international organizations or regional organizations to help us understand the dynamics and have countries from regions come together. We are already looking forward to a Middle East drug dialogue, which will take place in mid-October in Hungary. We're looking at the African Union assembling supply reduction focal points in Madagascar and demand reduction focal points in Tanzania later this year. We are looking forward to the Pacific Island meetings, one for demand and one for supply. The Organization of American States is helping us in arranging meetings for the Western Hemisphere, and UNODC, as in past year, supports the convening of Central Asian drug authorities, and I'm sure there will be other meetings of European governments and/or North American governments as well. So the world is coming together on regional forums to look at regional dynamics and how to best address them. And third, finally, I would like to say that we're looking at lines of action for the second year. What does this mean? Well, by September, we are hoping to then have reports from the sub-working group co-chairs and working group co-chairs. We're looking at very specific and concrete initiatives and actions that we can then form smaller groups or groups of interested countries to then carry those forward as parts of programs, initiatives that will go forward. And so if your country, or if you as an individual within your government is interested in participating in some of these, the next month will give the opportunity to identify and then to join and to move forward. Please go to the next slide. And I'll just remind you that the website will remain the organizing platform. Oh, go back one. Sorry. Organizing platform for the work that we are doing. So we will be posting calendars, opportunities, and we will be explaining what these lines of action are moving forward. I would like to give a couple examples where we can help illustrate what some of them might look like. We can use, if you see on the slide, it outlines it. We can use the legislative network I mentioned earlier, INLAD, as an example. So what might a year look like for a participating parliamentarian and or their staffer? In October, UNODC plans to conduct its initial launch, with OAS-CCAD subsequently launching the pilot for the Western Hemisphere a few weeks later. If your government or an individual within the government is interested, you might express that interest to participate in October. This is just for hypothetical purposes and does not reflect the actual plan, but just to demonstrate how a program might work. In December, we might have an in-person meeting that identifies priorities for legislative development. It may, for example, it may be class-wide scheduling. That might be something that legislators might want to take up and share sample legislation on. So from January to June, the staffers of their respective countries could finalize and work with their legislator to introduce a bill. That legislation could be adapted, and we could have an outcome by July or August that would say the number of draft laws or bills were considered for approval, and this number was then passed. So now the drug control architecture is stronger as a result of these efforts. Down from the red down to the green, another initiative I could give an example is the generic development of a training program or law enforcement cyber reduction professionals, and we could identify participants, collect some baseline data such as what is their success or impact. We could conduct training that includes mentoring and technical assistance, and at a later time have an assessment of impact as a result of this training environment. So these are the basic but illustrative examples of what actions and initiatives might look like we could pursue moving forward in the coming year. You might find one or more of these of interest, so we would encourage you or other experts you might designate to participate moving forward. And if we could move to the final slide. Yeah, I'm going to stop talking here. Thank you for your patience. I know that was a lot of information to pass. Continue to thank you for your collaboration, and I will turn it over to our co-chair, is Devon Naker here to take over? Thank you.
I saw him online. Devon, are you there?
I'm here. I'm just trying to. Okay, there we go. Thank you, Greg, for the introduction. We're encouraged by what has been achieved so far, and we look forward to what's to come.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you too, Greg. Okay, it depends where you are in the world. Good morning, good day, good afternoon, evening. And thank you for taking the time to join us today for this August West session of the Global Coalition Sub-Working Group 1.1. Now, for those that are joining us for the first time or unfamiliar with the working groups, Sub-Working Group 1.1 deals specifically with the manufacturing of synthetic drugs, their precursors, and equipment. To introduce myself firstly, my name is Devon Naika. I'm a brigadier and a national narcotics head in South Africa. Manufacturing and trafficking of synthetic drugs and precursors and equipment use falls within the mandate of my office, the South African Narcotics Bureau. So I will be your co-chair for this session. My partner, Andrew, who most of you would know, is away on a well-deserved holiday. I think he chose this time very, very specifically. Over the last year, we have covered many important topics, like Greg has mentioned, ranging from synthetic drug manufacture, precursors and equipment, diversion and even disposal of chemical waste, and many others. Today, we take on a more technical subject that is legislative responses. We know drugs kills, especially synthetic drugs, but bad or outdated legislation and policy kills more. The simple substitution of chemicals using precursors, changing the molecular structure, which is not regulated, makes it challenging for most governments with no proper legislation, and rely on voluntary compliance from the chemical industry. Due to the technicalities of today's session, we have limited the presentations to two experienced speakers. I hope it will also give us time to engage them or make some interventions after both presentations. Firstly, we have my friend Paulo Essa Alexandra, who is a European Union Commission policy officer in the Taxation and Customs Union. He is also a task member in the INC Project PRISM, and knowing him for a while, he comes with a wealth of knowledge. Paulo will present on the European Union challenge on drug precursors, in particular designer precursors, and possibly legislative responses. Paulo, if you're there, the floor is yours, sir.
Yes, good afternoon, Devon. Nice to see you. I hope you can all hear me well. So good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you are. I'm very pleased to be here today. Thank you for the invitation. I'm very happy to be the one presenting the EU perspective on drug precursors. So as Devon explained, I work for the European Commission, DG Tax Sud, so we are responsible for taxation and customs union. And one of our tasks is to control and monitoring of trade of drug precursors with third countries. So the EU has a number of players, activities, policies in the fight against drugs trafficking. But here I'd like to focus solely on drug precursor control. So of course we could speak about a lot of activities, the EU action plan against drugs trafficking, against organized crime, etc. But here is just focusing on precursor control, main challenges and possible legislative responses. So taking this into account, I will try to be fast on the first part of the presentation, the first 6 slides, because there it's mainly about legislation and the EU approach over the years. But then the idea would be to focus on the main challenges of our approach. I don't see the slides yet, but
Sure,
I
I've
guess
got them ready for you. 1 second.
yeah. Yes, perfect. So you can move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So here is just, as I explained, the legal framework. Of course, we are implementing, the EU legislation implements Article 12 of the 1988 Convention. We have 2 main regulations, one about external trade of drug precursors, as I explained, with third countries. And then we have also another regulation on intra-EU trade of drug precursors, so between EU member states. What is important to highlight is that we have all identical rules and obligations throughout the EU. So all 27 EU member states apply the same rules. These are directly applicable. Member states don't need to have any work, let's say, to transpose this into legislation because it's a regulation, so it's directly applicable in their member states. So member states have national competences only on sanctions and penalties. This is a member state competence, and they decide how they want to implement the penalties and sanctions, and they also have national competences on organizational matters. So next slide, please. For the EU, the cooperation with the EU industry is a cornerstone of our approach. We believe we have a very good partnership with the EU industry. So member states, competent authorities, and the EU industries work hand in hand. And we believe that this is, of course, very, very important. This was even more important when we were dealing only with traditional drug precursors. So precursors that have legal and legitimate uses. But we will come back to that later on. So with our industry, we also, so they are obliged to notify the competent authorities of any suspicious transaction they would encounter. We also have a voluntary monitoring list of non-scheduled substances. There we try to alert economic operators for any suspicious transaction or any use of these substances, even though they are not scheduled, they present a higher risk of being used in illicit manufacture of drugs. So of course, this is also a very important instrument with the industry. And then we also have guidelines for operators where we try to instruct them and help them in identifying these suspicious transactions. This is, of course, another very important instrument that we use with the industry. Next slide, please. Here, it's about strengthening controls. It's important to highlight that the EU uses risk management tools. With the volume of trade, it will be impossible otherwise. We use the exchange of risk information through a secure platform, which is CRMS. And so very quickly, we can inform all customs or all border crossing points and customs in particular that, for example, a new modus operandi is detected. And there we use this risk information form. We also use common risk criteria with the import control system, ICS2. There we also mention, okay, targeting is important, but we also need, after targeting, be able to detect and analyze what substances are we dealing with. And there it's important that we have improved or enhanced detection capabilities. And there we use the assistance of the Joint Research Center. It's also a Commission institution. It's part of the Commission. We use the Customs Labs network and the network of forensic institutes. And since very recently, well, we have the European Union Drugs Agency that was now, well, as a new name, it was the Monitoring Center of the EU. But since the 2nd of July, we have the EUDA now also giving an assistance in this area of precursors. I also make a reference to a project to test chemicals and also drugs in a very fast way, and also trying to reduce the false positives, so giving more assurance of what substances we are dealing with. Next slide, please. So about international cooperation, the EU has a very active role at the Commission of Narcotic Drugs every year, of course. We are also, as Devin mentioned, we are also collaborating quite closely with the INCB and especially at the task force meetings. This is something that we believe it's really very important. And so that's why this comes first in our multilateral work. But of course, now we have the Global Coalition. We are also, since the start, very actively supporting the Global Coalition. We believe this is a very good opportunity to move forward in this area, and not only on synthetic drugs, but in general, in the fight against drugs. And then also, besides this multilateral level, we also work at bilateral level. And here we have 11 specific agreements on drug precursors. So this is very important. We can exchange information with our partners or with these countries, which is very important for the work of drug precursors. Of course, some of these agreements now are less active because we don't have diversion or trafficking cases. Some others we need to be very active because we have a lot of cases. And here I'm referring specifically to China. Next slide, please. So what I would just try to resume here is that the EU has an holistic approach. We try to have a robust legal framework. We cooperate with industry. We also try to exert control to enforce the legislation. And we also work at international level, at different levels also. And here what the question is this effective? Is this working properly? And the reply is simple. So from a drug precursor perspective, yes and no. So yes, because we had a robust legal framework and also enforcement, the criminals had difficulties, are having difficulties to get their hands on scheduled substances. So the scheduled substances are very difficult to obtain by criminals. But I had mentioned no as well. So it's not working well because all the scheduled substances, the key precursors, are being replaced by designer precursors. So by designer precursors, I am referring to the purpose-made substances to circumvent drug precursor control, which don't have any known legitimate uses. And usually they are derivatives or related chemicals of the key precursor. We will talk about this soon, so I'll go in more detail. Next slide, please. So here the title of the slide refers to the EU, designer precursors in the EU, but this in fact could be applied to several other regions in the world. Designer precursors became now a global phenomenon. We can see this in many other regions of the world. But referring back to the EU, so as you know, the EU, of course, receives many smuggled drugs such as cocaine, heroin, cannabis, many others. But the EU is also a significant producer of amphetamine type stimulants. This is a problem that the EU has. And what we can see and observe now is that 95% of the total production of amphetamine type stimulants in the EU, they are using designer precursors in their manufacture. So these designer precursors are always, at least all the intelligence gathered so far and now in the last 15 years, all these designer precursors are coming from abroad, are coming from China, that is the origin. They are always smuggled in, they are misclassified, misdeclared. They also use fake company names, addresses. They are also mislabeled. So all this is very similar to normal drug criminality. And in fact, we should use the word trafficking of designer precursors and not diversion, because these substances never enter the illicit channels. They are never properly declared. So this is important to make a clear distinction between traditional drug precursors, so with legitimate uses, and designer precursors that in fact are very seriously challenging drug precursor control, because most of the measures that we have in the convention, in the EU legislation, are trying to avoid diversion. But these substances are not to be in the legal supply chain. So we need to refer to trafficking and to a modus operandi very similar to drugs. Next slide, please. Here, what we try to illustrate is a key precursor of amphetamine and methamphetamine production, BMK. And we illustrate here what we observed in the EU. And we try to link the emergence of designer precursors, the scheduling, and then a new designer precursors appearing or emerging in the market. So as you can see in the slide, the first seizures of APAN started more or less in 2010, and then we scheduled it in 2014. Even before scheduling this substance, APAN, very quickly we see the emergence of APA. So there was very quickly a new designer precursor replacing, well, BMK and then APAN as designer precursors. So as soon as we schedule, and you can see that the EU has been active, at least in these last few years, we have been scheduling all designer precursors detected in the EU for both BMK, so a precursor for amphetamine and methamphetamine, and also for PMK, precursor for a key precursor for MDMA production. So here we are just referring to BMK, but you can see APAN, then APA, then MAPA. You also see the date of scheduling, then EAPA, the APD, and now we also schedule, even before the vote at the CND, we schedule the esters of BMK glycidic acid. So this is just to show that we can be fast, we can try to schedule more substances, but the pace that the criminals have they are much faster than us. So this is not really effective in designer precursors. So this is a problem that the EU, and not only the EU, has, because it's very difficult to tackle the issues with designer precursors. Next slide, please. So one of the reasons that why the EU is considering a possible revision of the EU legislation is exactly to deal with the problems of designer precursors, and this including the online trade of designer precursors. If we go in that direction, we will also try to well, take the opportunity to improve the legislation in other areas. And there we mention enhanced information exchange, risk analysis, detection and laboratory capabilities, as we mentioned. We also need to raise awareness for law enforcement agencies and judiciary. Of course, when we are talking about law enforcement and judiciary, when they see the issues they have with drugs, they focus on drugs, and sometimes they forget that drug precursors are key in the supply of drugs. So we need to continue to raise awareness for those specific players. We will also try to digitalize and simplify all the procedures on drug precursors. And of course, we will continue to work with the industry, trying to improve the cooperation. And as we mentioned, we believe we have a good cooperation, but we need to continue to work with the industry along the supply chain. So the producers of chemicals in the EU, they are very aware of the issues with drug precursors. But as we move along in the supply chain, it's more difficult to pass that message. So next slide, please. So here are the measures that we believe could maybe help or even address the issues we have with designer precursors. So the first measures would be about scheduling. So of course, so we have already a first step on proactive scheduling, as we did with the esters of BMK and glycidic acid, as mentioned. So we would continue to use proactive scheduling, so getting ahead of criminals, even if they were not detected that substance. If we think that these substances are the most probable ones to be used by criminals, we would schedule them already ahead of detecting them. And also, then what we would do is not only have substance by substance scheduling, but have group scheduling. So in one go, schedule a group of designer precursors that could be used by criminals. We also will continue to streamline our procedures for scheduling, so try to have a faster scheduling. That is, of course, continues to be very important to react quickly to new modus operandi. We also, already in 2013, we had amended our legislation to include a provision which we call the catch-all clause. So there we tried to, even if the substance was not scheduled, if there was sufficient evidence that this was going to be used, the substance was going to be used in illicit manufacture of drugs, that would allow the authorities to prohibit the entry of the substance in the EU territory. We have issues to implement this provision. Many member states had problems to implement it, so we want to continue to have that provision, but now establish maybe objective criteria to help member states to use this provision, because we still believe it's a rather important one. Since recently, as I mentioned, we have now the European Union's Drugs Agency also with a mandate to cover drug precursors. So they will be providing scientific advice to the EU in the area of precursors. This is something very, very important, and I think will be a game changer in that sense. And also what we will have, also with the help of the assistance of the UDA, we will have a EU precursor notification system. So in fact, this is a kind of a early warning system that exists already in the EU for NPS, for new psychoactive substances. And we will try to do the same, but for new designer precursors. So as when a new designer precursor is detected, all relevant players will be informed immediately that a new substance was detected in the EU. And all the information will be, as I said, shared with all the customs authorities in the EU, all border crossing points, the customs labs, forensic labs, the Joint Research Center, so all the relevant partners, police as well, of course. So this is also a mechanism that we believe we could be very important in the future. And of course, we will continue to work at the international level, because we believe we need a global response to that. But I'm already going ahead. Next slide, please. Yes, and to conclude, so drug precursor control as it stands now in the EU is not fit to tackle designer precursors, and especially for synthetic drugs, designer precursors are particularly relevant. So this is why we thought that this is a topic that is very important to bring into the discussion in a global coalition. We also know, and already had exchanges at international level, that some countries had very positive results having group or extended scheduling. We can mention the US and Canada, for example, on drug precursors legislation, which we want to learn from as well. And also the EU member states, in Germany, Austria, and Belgium, they also have this kind of group scheduling or marker structure in this case regarding new psychoactive substances. So it's maybe, I think, good to also go in that direction. But as I mentioned, international cooperation is vital, and international scheduling is, of course, more effective than national scheduling. I think that is undisputed. This is very clear to all. In our case, for designer precursors coming from China, even we schedule, if China does not schedule, it's difficult to move forward or to be as effective as we could be if we have international scheduling. The proactive scheduling of the esters of both BMK and PMK glycidic acid at the last CND in March was, in our view, a very important step. This was a very good measure. And of course, we believe it will be crucial to continue that path. We believe that this is one of the solutions to tackle designer precursors. So as I mentioned, we need a global response at UN level. And we believe also that the coalition also has its role and can help to steer and to have a more ambitious agenda in tackling designer precursors and the fight against drugs trafficking. The EU, as usual, stands ready to work together with all partners in the coalition, but also in all fronts at UN level as well, to address the issues with designer precursors and synthetic drug manufacture. I believe this is all from my side. So thank you very much for your attention. And of course, I'm happy to try to answer any questions you may have. Thank you very much. Back to you, Devin.
Devin, do we still have you on the line? I think we might have lost him, so I might just introduce our next speaker, who is, and I apologize for mispronouncing your name, but Lincoln Wang, who's the unit chief of the Drug and Chemical Evaluation Section, the DEA, who will be presenting on special surveillance lists and chemical regulations. Off to you. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. Thanks, Chair and Co-Chair, and thanks for INL and the interpreters, translators. Today, I would like to take the next 10 minutes to present U.S. experience on the front of how we address the synthetic drug and precursor chemical, and briefly touch upon on the legislation framework, as well as our regulatory approaches when we're dealing with a majority focus on fentanyl analog related precursor chemicals. Synthetic drug problem is emerging in the global threat, and that is no difference in U.S. situation as well. And here I highlighted is the forensic laboratory analysis and identification of report of a drug evidence seized by the law enforcement. As you can see here, in the calendar year of 2022, top one drug is most prevalent drug is methamphetamine in the United States, and fentanyl is the number 3 drug encountered or reported, analyzed it, and drug in the drug exhibit. So in order to make those synthetic drug, we know precursor chemicals is the big challenge here, how they're being diverted, how they're being trafficked, like the previous presenter indicated, Paula. So I want to focus here and introduce a little bit more on let me go back on this one. How is evolved in the US situation here, and look back to 2 decades of data available and to us, and we can see the top 2 line, the yellow and the green line, crossing at the 2013. That means the methamphetamine is exceeding the cocaine as a stimulant category as the most prevalent, most popular drug is seized and encountered in the United States. So the next two set of data, and you can see that is the fentanyl and heroin situation. So in the year of 2019, we can see the fentanyl as exceeding the encounter of heroin in the United States. So looking at the synthetic drug problem, and we are changing and to look at the precursor chemical, how they've been used in the manufacture of the controlled substance. Fentanyl is Schedule 2 controlled substance in the United States. Fentanyl analog, majority of those is Schedule 1, some of those is in Schedule 2. Here, I just want to focus only on fentanyl and fentanyl-like substance precursor chemical. As you can see in this busy chart, there's many ways can make fentanyl. The one on the center is the fentanyl. And so it can make it from MPP, AMPP, from 4AP and BOC4AP and 4P and BOC4P. So it's a number of ways can make it, and that make the challenge to address the precursor chemical diversion and trafficking issue is so important, and how we can address those supply chain from each link and make sure we can strengthen the regulatory process to address the issue preventing the diversion and the use of those precursor in the manufacture of controlled substance. In the United States, and our drug law is Controlled Substance Act, established it and consolidated in 1970. So for the chemical control part of it, it was implemented through the law. Chemical Diversion and Traffic Act is signed into law in 1988. So our CSA also contained extensive component on how to regulating and define violation and penalty, address the chemical precursor chemical diversion and wrongdoing related to that. So in 1988, when we passed the law, and that was initially only 12 regulated chemical, and plus a essential chemical was added to our CSA, and we defined them as a listed chemical, is separate from the scheduling substance in the United States law CSA. So since then, we are use our regulatory approach. We also call it administrative control, and added additional new emerging precursor onto our list 1. In here, we can see now we have 39 precursor chemical is under the list 1 regulation. And majority of those in the past several years control initiated by US government or us internally was focused on the fentanyl and fentanyl analog precursor. As you can see here, earlier one of those concepts was introduced is the group control. So when we control or regulating precursor chemical, we not just identify the parent compound. In here, for example, the 39, you can see, or 38, and the 4-piperidone, we identify the parent compound. We also set into a general definition of group control. So any amine, carbamate, or acetyls of a 4-piperidone also considered as a list 1 chemical as well. So you can spot some of those general chemical grouping definition, like optical isomer, ether, and that type of a general group control language in US regulatory language on precursor chemicals, list 1. And here is another 11 of chemical substance is on the list 1 and list 2. So what's the difference here? And for our two category of list 1 and list 2, here's the regulatory requirement. Once a precursor chemical is designated under list 1 or list 2, so the legitimate business or the company, manufacturer, import, exporter, distributor, and need to comply and with this requirement. And so for list 1 chemical, it have a long list of requirements. And list 2, and 2 of those category was did not tick or check with the registration. So list 1 chemical require registration. Is a similar like some other country, like a license. You need to register with DEA in order to handle list 1 chemical. And the other category difference between list 1 and list 2 is mail order reporting. Obviously, our regulatory requirement also including extensive of record keeping, reporting requirement, and import-export notification or declaration. So how we disseminate those information to the company, legitimate business, and help them to comply with the regulatory requirement, as well as help them to spot any anything is irregular transaction or required for purchase. And we do make those information available on DEA's website and identify those precursor chemical and what their potential illicit use, what they can be used in the illicit manufacture or controlled substance. So this is one of those resource. Our section here is maintained and made available to our investigator, as well as share with our counterpart and in a foreign country as well. And on the most right-hand side, we even identify the global production as well as some safety precaution, just assist with our law enforcement investigating when they encounter those dangerous chemicals. So what is the penalty? When we are regulating or control precursor chemical, and what is the violation and the potential penalty? In here, I want to highlight the list chemical, which including the list 1 and list 2 chemical, and they do carry a criminal penalty if an individual person entity is knowingly and intentionally and possess or distribute those list chemical and intend to manufacture a controlled substance, they are subject to prosecution. So it's a long list of violation detailed in our CSA. I will be happy to, if individual or other country interested in how we structure our law and regulation, and we can have offline discussion on that one. It's just too much of a detail to elaborate in here. And so also we define the import-export related violation. So chemical do subject to the import-export declaration requirement. Is any violation, it can be prosecuted criminally. Just want to highlight 2 most recent cases. One is in last year, in June 2023. This is collaborated effort and throughout the law enforcement, and also involved DEA as well. And this indictment, 2 indictments charged the 8 individual and entities, and that is distributing the precursor chemical among other other regulatory violation and criminal charge. And this one is charged with conspiracy of distributing precursor chemical and intent to manufacture fentanyl and fentanyl analog. So this particular case and involve a number of fentanyl precursor chemical, for example, and 4-AP, BAC4-AP, and also involve fentanyl and other newly emerging synthetic opioid like benzomethasone. Another case is in October 2023. is the result of Operation Camp Catcher. And so this is an indictment of 8 indictment, charged 12 individual and entity. This indictment is come out from our Florida 2 district and South and Middle District. And that is focused on the distribution of precursor chemical that involve fentanyl, as trafficking of fentanyl and fluorfentanyl, as well as precursor fluor 4AP and AMPP. Those have a number of defendants currently still ongoing with this criminal case prosecution. So here is a very high level glance at how United States is control precursor chemicals. So we do go through this scientific evaluation process and taking information and input from the legitimate industry. When we identified it, we evaluate it from the scientific perspective, analyze how it can be used in the organic synthesis process and produce a controlled substance. And we have 2 steps of publication, our DA's intent, and 2 Federal Register, which is a daily journal of our government, federal government's regulatory rules. And so once we publish the notice of rulemaking, proposed rulemaking, then we giving certain amount of time, 30 days, 60 days, to allow the comment come in from industry, from association, and from anyone interested. And then we compile and address those comments and publish final rule, then it's become final. And the chemical we propose will add it to list 1 or list 2 control. So in the past several years, in United States, we are actually in 2006 and 2010, addressed the 2 precursor, MPP and AMPP, placed in the proper schedule and list. And to address those at that time, it was the safer way of a method synthesis pathway to making fentanyl. And after we control the MPP, and as we see the illicit drug production market, they switched it to other non-regulated, non-controlled precursor, like a 4-enollyl piperidine, 4AP. And then we subsequently control that one. Then we see the evolution of change to 4-piperidone. And then in last year, 2003.
Ms. Lequin, I hate to interrupt this lovely presentation, but in view of the other working groups that need to continue after you, I was just hoping you could just wrap it up in the next few minutes.
Okay,
Thank
here's
you.
just the highlight. Thank you very much. Here's the highlight of the domestic control approach, as well as United States initiated request to the international body, and that showed the evolution of the fentanyl precursor chemical control. And also, I'm going to quickly glide through except the list 1 and list 2, we also have special surveillance list, and that is do not imply and impose any regulatory requirement. However, it do carry civil and criminal penalty, and we can update that relatively easily. I just want to highlight one example is phenylethyl bromide, and if we search the CAS number and do allow us to identify some of those internet availability, and that is the one of those websites selling it, as you can see, that is pretty obvious, and they are focused on those known precursor can be used in the clandestine manufacture of controlled substance. And so that is pretty much on our regulatory approach, how we address list chemical as well as surveillance list. And here I want to end it out with the most recent Reuters report, and that is investigation report and how easily they can acquire the precursor chemical and ship it to United States as well as to Mexico City. And those is a focus on the fentanyl production of it. So ended up in there, and thank you very much for your time, and we will be happy to answer any question that may come up.
Devin, I think you are muted.
Ms. Lee Kun, thank you very much for your presentation, and I apologize for having to cut you short. Greg, do you think we have time for questions? I know we've gone over the time limit already.
I think we have time for one. We have 2 minutes, but then we'll be going into the next one. So if there's any pressing question or one that you have, I think we can share it. But otherwise, we're about to wrap up.
Okay, is there any questions, presentations, Paulo and Ms. Quinn? You know, one of the things that we've learned from both of the DEA and the EU is that international cooperation and cooperation with the industry is vital in the fight as a synthetic opiates and NPS crisis knows no borders. Countries must work together to regulate these precursor chemicals, share intelligence on trafficking networks, and coordinate responses to emerging threats. By sharing information on new NPSs and leveraging the collective expertise and resources of our international community, we can develop more effective strategies to combat the spread of these substances and protect public health. Looking at what's happening in the US with the number of deaths. As a global coalition partners, we have a unique opportunity here to lead these efforts and make a significant impact on this pressing global issue. And again, I just want to thank the two speakers for the excellent presentations, and I hand it back to you, Greg, to continue with the rest of the working groups.
I want to echo your comments. They were excellent presentations this morning. So thank both of our presenters, and I'll turn it over to Sarah. We're about to kick over to 1.2.
And I will continue the ping pong and ask our technical moderator, vacation. Perfect. So I just want to say good evening, good morning from Washington, D.C., and we welcome you to the Global Coalition to Address Synthetic Drug Threats, session 1.2 for the West team on August 13th, 2024. And of course, I am pleased to share with you some administrative announcements as we kick off the final sub-working group session before we reconvene as working groups next month. So first, I would like to begin by giving big thanks to our co-chairs, Mikhail Alexandrowicz and George Pasiaskos, for all of their work over the past 11 months. It has been quite an intensive program, and we are so grateful for your dedication. I also would like to thank our international organization coordinators, Asma Fakhri and Bob Vanderberg. They have been great collaborators over all these months, and we are very grateful for all their support, including helping us identify speakers each month, organizing the calls, and advancing the coalition's work in more ways than we can count. Thank you. So the themes for today's meeting revolve around monitoring, evaluation, and transitioning for stability. Now that we're coming to the close of the first year of the coalition, we have a really diverse membership, and we need to look at how we transition to a new phase that is one more manageable and easier to organize and outcome-oriented. We come from so many different backgrounds, so many different professions, that to really start to make progress for this next phase, we need to find a way to manage the work better. And as I said, in the second year, our successes will be measured very specifically by the outcomes of the actions and initiatives that we undertake, which I will come back to in just a moment. Next slide. So first, let's cover some of our accomplishments so far. The ministerial meeting, if you remember, way back in that launched on July 7th, 2023, it demonstrated the high level of political commitment to address synthetic drug threats, and top leadership in over 80 countries answering a call to action. it instilled in us a sense of urgency, a focus that has led to these very productive meetings that we've held over the past 11 months. So this slide is going to outline some of these accomplishments. One, we've developed a network of over 1,600 government representatives and representatives from international organizations from over 158 countries, all united with the common purpose to find practical solutions to address synthetic drug threats. Also, in total, by the end of the September sessions, we will have engaged in 148 hours of virtual meetings with interpretation in 7 different languages to understand the problem, exchange experiences, share opportunities, discuss new ideas from all over the world. It's been incredible. And in May, remember, we worked together to identify 68 recommended areas of work across all sub-working groups, and the international organizations compiled roughly 120 initiatives to act out on these recommendations. Also, we had in-person meetings, one in Italy with the working group 2 on data in Italy, and then in Greece, co-chairs from all working groups and sub-working groups gathered together. And so through both of these meetings, there was a realization that this issue is going to require continued and intensified cooperation, as well as funding and resources for many years to come. Because this is not an acute issue that is solved, it is a chronic issue that is continually getting worse and requires the attention of the international community and the development of new responses, new ways, new strategies of addressing the drug phenomenon. This past year, we focused on building the car and building the infrastructure, but now comes the time to start driving. The many hours of meetings have shown the scope. You can go back one, Emma. Yeah, thanks. The many hours of meetings have shown the scope, the intensity of our work, and the extensive nature of the subjects that's required so much intensity. So I really want to, again, sincerely thank you all for your dedication, participation, and endurance for what we know has been a lot of time given everyone's busy schedules, but it's been a very meaningful exercise and we really appreciate the collaboration. Okay, next one, thanks. So let's think of what else the coalition has accomplished. One, networks, like I mentioned. On the health side, the launch of the Global Recovery Network, the Global Women's Network for Treatment and Clinicians, and the International Consortium for Alternatives to Incarceration, or ICATI, will help move people from the criminal justice system into a community-based treatment services. And we also have a new network that we mentioned previously that will be coming in the future, the International Network for Legislation on Drugs, or INLAD, which will help fill some of the legislative and policy gaps that have been identified. And overall, we've been raising the profile of the many methods for addressing synthetic drug threats. 120 initiatives from international organizations that span from intelligence and information sharing platforms, training programs, capacity building opportunities, and so much more. We've seen coalition participants actively expressing interest in the programs offered, which is an excellent signal of engagement. So next, I'd like to raise the issue of donors and developing funding support packages for the coming year. And here I'll mention INL. We are looking specifically at about 30 initiatives that we want to support from the menu developed and have really oriented our programming to support global coalition initiatives almost exclusively for this coming year. Next slide, please. So what is left? As I have mentioned, we built the car and now we need to get moving. We need to operationalize all that we have been discussing, and there are 3 lines of effort we would like to propose going forward in the coalition after September. So the first is collective meetings as a coalition. So one thing that we are looking at doing is a donor coordination conference to look at assistance that is already being provided and to take stock of additional needs that the international community is facing, so that we are aware of what's being contributed, what we are already contributing, and what needs to be contributed further. Second, we're considering a thought leaders conference as an activity for next year. The idea being to convene academia, think tanks, and policymakers to bring research, policy, and practice together and help look at a forecast of where the field is going, where synthetic drugs may pose a greater risk in the future, and what the patterns are looking like, so we can try to undermine and address some of those challenges proactively. And so that is something that we're looking at. And so while these monthly meetings may wind down, we will reconvene as a coalition at various times in the future. And we look forward and invite your feedback in terms of recommendations for regrouping as the coalition. Second, we're looking at regional meetings and considering how regional meetings organized by international organizations or regional organizations can help us understand the dynamics and have countries from regions all come together. And we are already looking forward to a Middle East drug dialogue, which will take place October 15th and 16th in Hungary. We're also looking at the African Union assembling supply reduction focal points in Madagascar and demand reduction focal points in Tanzania later this year. The coalition's also looking forward to Pacific Island meetings focused on demand and one for supply. Also, the Organization of American States is helping the coalition in arranging meetings for the Western Hemisphere and UNODC, as in past years, to support the convening of the Central Asian Drug Authorities. And of course, there will be plenty of other meetings of European governments and/or North American governments as well. The world's really coming together through these regional forums to look at these dynamics and how best to address them. Finally, I'd like to say what we are looking at in terms of lines of action for the second year. By September, we're hoping to have reports from sub-working groups to the working groups on specific and concrete initiatives and actions that can then form smaller groups or groups of interested countries to carry forward. So if your country or if you as an individual within your government is interested in participating in some of these, the next month will give the opportunity to identify them and join and move forward. Next slide, please. Perfect. Yes, here we go. Perfect. If you want to just click through the points, it'll help you out. Thanks, hon. The website will remain the organizing platform for the work that we are doing through year 2, as we'll be posting calendars of events and opportunities. And moving forward, we're going to explain more of what these lines of action are, but just a couple examples to get us started. There's the legislative network I mentioned earlier, INLAD. So what might a year look like for a participating parliamentarian or their staffer? So this is a hypothetical example that will get hashed out further. But in October, UNODC plans to conduct its initial launch with OAS CCAD, subsequently launching the pilot for the Western Hemisphere. If your government or an individual within the government is interested, you might express that interest to participate in October. And in December, there could be an in-person meeting that identifies the priorities for legislative development. For example, classified scheduling that legislators might want to take up and share sample legislation on. Then from January to June, staffers of respective countries could finalize and work with legislators to introduce a bill. The legislation could be adapted, and we could have an outcome by July or August that would say, this is the number of draft laws or bills that were considered for approval, and this is how the drug control architecture could be stronger as a result. A second example could be around the just general development of a training program for law enforcement or drug demand reduction professionals. The timeline looks at identifying participants, collecting baseline data such as success and impact in the past. And then from there, conducting or creating a training schedule and conducting training that includes mentoring and technical assistance, and at a later time, have an assessment of what that impact was of the training environment. So these are basic but illustrative examples of what actions and initiatives might look like moving forward in the coming year. If you might find one of these of interest, so we encourage you or other experts you may designate to participate moving forward. And with that, I talked a lot. So I just want to say thank you all again. And I really look forward, as we all do, to the presentations for today's session. And I will turn it over to our co-chairs. I think I saw George on the line, potentially Mikhail.
Yes, thanks, sir. Mikhail is having technical difficulties. While he's out on holidays and a very strong internet connection, so he may not be joining us. Luckily, we didn't have a catastrophic failure because our internet went down like just as the meeting began. So I don't know if we're being hacked again or not, but
Oh, gosh.
welcome to the August meeting. We have two presentations today. The first is from our colleagues with the Indonesian narcotics interdiction. Andre Arza, Senior Narcotics Analyst for the Directorate of Narcotics Interdiction, will be presenting. Is Andre on the line?
Yes, I'm pulling up the recording right now. Just give me 1 second.
Oh, it's recording. Okay.
Hold on. Apologies. There we go. All right.
Okay, thank you everyone for the time. Please introduce me. My name is Andre Arza. I'm from Indonesian Custom. Actually, we have much story, such a story maybe that we can share for everyone. But for this time, maybe we will share about clandestine lab that we have found in Bali. Next. Indonesian Custom have a strategic to against clandestine laboratory. The first is to promote the collaboration and information sharing with international organization and custom agency. After that, we have to promote collaboration in information sharing with law enforcement agency in Indonesia, like Indonesian Narcotic Board and National Police. And then Custom consistent conduct intelligent operation to detect the shipment of chemical suspect to be used for the construction of clandestine lab. The support of custom laboratory at the port and the airport is very important to give the need for laboratory tests to detect the narcotic or substance for narcotic, and promote prioritize safety protocol and handling procedure to avoid accident in the field, to protect the officer in the field. Next. Okay. Yeah. So I say I will. This is our. We have 3 main laboratory that the place in the biggest city in Indonesia, in Jakarta, Surabaya, and Medan. And we have more satellite laboratory in almost in every city in Indonesia. And this laboratory starting from satellite laboratory starting we start to spread in every city in Indonesia starting from 2016 until now, and maybe for the next year we will have more satellite laboratory and in other city in Indonesia to support the field officer that can be take the some so it is Indonesia we have already found and detect about 139 NPS start from 2016 until the 2024, and in 129 is already list as drug, and 10 substance is now is And now 10 substance is proposed to the next list in maybe in this years. This the entry point from the international to coming with precursor and post for detect the substance. We use to detect chemical suspect of being intense for a chemical for condition lab include the following. The first is the consignee. That's the consignee almost unclear data concerning profile. That there is shape of the good often used and unclear data concerning profile. And then the shipper. The shipper is like the origin country from which the good are shipped in the parameter is a parameter with some countries having a higher risk of shipping chemical that can be used as a precursor. And then the good declaration. Most of them have the not we will talk about the condition lab in Bali. Now we in this case the precursor was declared as a paint pigment, and our lab get the test and detect as 4-methyl propionophenol, which has sent with to Bali with the express courier. Based on the laboratory result, it was identified by methyl propionophenol, and then during the development of this case, our custom analysis team conduct information also by patrol on domestic online marketplace, and we found some shipment to an address near from the target location. Consequently, Indonesian Custom and the National Police collaborate all our data and information, conduct further investigation, which lead to the seize of the clandestine lab in Bali. They managed to secure quantities of mephedrone and get some hydroponic cannabis and apprehended for foreign suspect. So in this case, we don't find Indonesian suspect. This the clandestine lab in Bali. Suspect produce mephedrone and hydroponic marijuana. The following are some of the chemical substance used for the production of mephedrone. The process is a compound of participate in a chemical reaction that produce another compound. That is methylamine, sulfuric acid, isooctane, and methylpropionophenol. In this list, we only have one listed in Indonesia, but the methylamine, isooctane, and 4-methylpropionophenol is not listed in Indonesia. And for the reagent, they use sodium hydroxide, sulfuric acid, magnesium sulfate, sodium borohydrate, hydrochloric acid, and natrium bicarbonate. The sulfuric acid was listed in Indonesia, then others is not listed. And then for the solvent, that the liquid substance capable to dissolve the other substance without changing their chemical structure. They use acetone, dichloromethane, isopropyl alcohol, ethyl acetate, and benzene. In this list, we have acetone was listed in Indonesian in regulated. Based the data of the we have collect, this is known that several precursors are used to produce the narcotic. For produce methadone, they use 4-methylpropionone and methylamine. They use as precursor along with several other chemicals serving as reagent to produce the methadone. Some of the reagent is like hydrogen peroxide, potassium hydroxide, ethyl acetate, hydrochloric acid, and isopropyl alcohol that we have found in the clandestine lab. And then for dimethyltryptamine, this is used as a precursor for the production of DMT along with the chemical serving as reagent. The calcium chloride, we found the calcium chloride, turpentine, naphtha, natrium borohydride, formalin, methanol, isoproporon, magnesium sulfate, and hexane. All of this list we don't get the in the listed chemical in our regulation. And for the methamphetamine, the syndicate use P2P or phenyl-2-propanone and methylamine as a precursor, along as the several other reagents to produce this methamphetamine that like acetic anhydride, ammonium chloride, and ethyl alcohol for the solvent. Okay, thank you. That our sharing for the clandestine lab in Bali.
Dear colleagues, thank you very much for the presentation, and Kai, welcome. I'm a little bit late for our today's meeting, but I have got some technical problems with the connection. But once again, I would like to thank to the Indonesian colleagues from the Narcotics Interdiction Department who provided this presentation regarding the interdictions of the synthetic drugs in the region. Now I would like to invite the next speaker that we have for today. This will be the presentation provided by the Moroccan authorities dedicated to their strategy in the fight against the trafficking of the synthetic drugs. And this presentation will be provided by Naufal Benkirane, Commissar de Police Principal from the Moroccan Directorate of the Moroccan Direction in general. So, if you
I'm sorry, sir, your connection is breaking up, sir.
I would like to ask you to start sharing your presentation. Bonjour. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes. Hello. If you could please start your presentation.
Vous m'entendez?
Yes, we can.
Oui, je vais partager mon présentation. Voilà, je tiens tout d'abord à vous remercier pour l'opportunité qui nous a été accordée pour donner un bref aperçu sur la stratégie marocaine de lutte contre le trafic de drogue de synthèse. Je me présente premièrement, je suis le commissaire de police principal, Naufal Benkirane, à la Direction générale de la Sûreté nationale. Cette présentation sera consacrée à la stratégie adoptée par le Maroc en matière de lutte anti-drogue, dans la mesure où l'accent sera mis sur les mesures qui ont été prises sur les plans stratégiques, institutionnels et opérationnels pour contrecarrer cette problématique. Tout d'abord, le trafic de stupéfiants, particulièrement les drogues de synthèse et les comprimés psychotropes, est l'une des menaces les plus pernicieuses auxquelles sont confrontés les services de sécurité marocains, vu ses répercussions néfastes sur les plans sécuritaires, sanitaires, économiques et sociaux. Ainsi, le Maroc a adopté depuis plusieurs années une stratégie multidimensionnelle ayant permis le démantèlement de nombreux groupes criminels avec la saisie d'importants lots de benzodiazépines et des amphétamines. Sur le plan législatif, le Maroc a enrichi son arsenal juridique par plusieurs textes de loi dans ce domaine, ainsi que par la ratification des conventions internationales. Voilà les conventions qui sont ratifiées par le Maroc. Au niveau stratégique, les services de sécurité marocains ont opté pour la collecte, l'analyse et l'exploitation des renseignements criminels, une coordination constante entre les différents départements engagés dans la lutte anti-drogue et le recours à des techniques d'enquête spécifiques innovantes et à la mise en place de dispositifs d'investigation mixtes. Le renforcement des capacités des services engagés dans la lutte anti-drogue demeure un enjeu stratégique à travers une meilleure gestion des frontières par l'adaptation des moyens de détection et de contrôle aux nouvelles contraintes liées à la surveillance des vecteurs terrestres, aériens et maritimes, une optimisation et une actualisation de la formation des sécuritaires marocains engagés dans la lutte anti-drogue à travers notamment des formations initiales, continues et spécialisées, et finalement par l'adoption de l'approche scientifique systématique. Pardon. L'engagement dans un processus durable de démantèlement des réseaux criminels opérant au niveau national et international, une application des dispositions législatives relatives à la lutte contre le blanchiment de capitaux, le renforcement de la coopération internationale par le biais des mécanismes de coopération bilatéraux et multilatéraux, et finalement la participation à des visites d'études et aux conférences internationales pour l'échange d'expertise et des pratiques optimales. Le développement de partenariats nationaux et internationaux et des programmes de sensibilisation sur le danger inhérent à l'usage de drogues et de substances psychotropes. Au niveau institutionnel, afin d'assurer une meilleure exécution des grandes orientations de la politique adoptée et d'atteindre les objectifs qui lui sont assignés, différentes structures et entités sont concernées par la prévention et la lutte contre le trafic de drogue et des substances psychotropes. Tout d'abord, les départements nationaux qui sont engagés dans ce processus sont la Direction générale de la Sûreté nationale, la douane, la gendarmerie royale, la marine royale, les forces armées royales, les forces auxiliaires, l'autorité locale et les services de sécurité. Parallèlement, il existe des entités spécialisées qui relèvent principalement de la police judiciaire, en l'occurrence le service central de lutte contre le trafic de drogue, dépendant de la direction de la police judiciaire qui se charge de la supervision et de l'encadrement de toutes les enquêtes menées par les services de police sur le plan national. Alors que sur le plan déconcentré, on trouve l'Office national de lutte contre le trafic de drogue, qui est un service dépendant de la Brigade nationale de police judiciaire à compétence territoriale nationale. Les brigades de stupéfiants, qui sont des équipes spécialisées créées au niveau de tous les services déconcentrés de police judiciaire. Les brigades mixtes, composées de différents services opérationnels de la Sûreté nationale, qui sont chargés plus particulièrement de lutter contre toutes les formes de délinquance aux abords et à l'enceinte des établissements scolaires. Sur le volet opérationnel, à la faveur de toutes ces mesures, les autorités marocaines procèdent chaque année au démantèlement de plusieurs réseaux criminels qui trompent dans cette activité avec la saisie d'importantes quantités de drogue de synthèse de type ecstasy et des substances psychotropes, ainsi que la logistique déployée à cet égard. Permettez-moi de partager avec vous les statistiques recensées dans ce cadre durant la période entre 2023 et 2024, qui s'élève à 595 cachets d'ecstasy saisis dans cette période. Voici quelques illustrations des saisies opérées au niveau national, des saisies de méthamphétamines. Les enquêtes menées ont démontré que des pays de l'Europe sont les pays de provenance des méthamphétamines et que sont considérés comme des producteurs d'ecstasy au niveau des continents européens. Pour expédier l'ecstasy, les réseaux criminels optent pour les agences de transport international de voyageurs et de marchandises et pour les convoyeurs parmi les Marocains établis à l'étranger en la dissimulant dans des bagages non accompagnés, des valises et des sacs par exemple, dans des cachettes aménagées au niveau des véhicules, et dans des roues de secours ou encore dans des machines électriques, des lave-vaisselle au défaut. Pour les substances psychotropes, une quantité de plus d'1,7 million comprimés psychotropes a été saisie durant la même période. Voici quelques illustrations des saisies opérées. Les efforts déployés par les autorités marocaines dans le cadre de la prévention et la lutte contre le trafic illicite de drogue synthétique ont été couronnés par des saisies records illustrées comme suit. 490 unités de tapentadol tafratol saisies en 2021 à bord d'un conteneur expédié depuis l'Inde à destination du Niger via le port maritime de Tangimed. Une autre opération de trafic international de Captagon entre le Liban et la Sierra Leone via le port toujours de Tangimed, portant sur la quantité de plus de 2 millions d'unités, a été déjouée en 2022 grâce à la coopération internationale avec nos partenaires. Enfin, à noter qu'aucune affaire se rapportant à la saisie et au détournement de précurseurs chimiques aux fins de fabrication de drogue n'a été traité auparavant par les services de la Sûreté nationale et qu'aucun laboratoire clandestin de fabrication de drogue sur la base notamment des produits chimiques n'a été détecté ou démantelé sur le territoire national. Voici les caractéristiques relevées des réseaux impliqués dans le trafic de drogue de synthèse qui optent dans leur activité criminelle pour la technique de cloisonnement. Avant de terminer, il convient de préciser que la problématique des drogues est incontestablement une menace commune qui nécessite une réponse commune et concertée, conformément notamment au principe de la responsabilité partagée préconisée par les instruments internationaux qui traitent de cette problématique. Et merci de votre attention.
Thank you very much, sir, for that presentation. At this time, if anybody has any questions for Mr. Benacunre, sorry if I butchered that name, but does anybody have any questions at this time for this gentleman? Okay, hearing none at this time. Any in the chat? No, I don't see any in the chat either. So I'll open up a question for you, sir, and that is, you mentioned a lot of the good work and the communication. What is your biggest struggle?
Good evening, wherever you are in the world. First of all, I want to apologize and please let me know if everyone can hear me. I was having internet problems. I had to switch to my cell phone. So I'm assuming that we're good to go. Sarah, if you could provide the slides, that would be wonderful. I'm calling in this morning from Guatemala City. My name is Greg D'Alessandro. I'll be doing my best Brian Morales interpretation. This is the Global Coalition to Address Synthetic Drug Threats, session 2.1 for the West. The date is August 13th, 2024. I am pleased to share with you some administrative announcements as we kick off the final sub-working group session of the Global Coalition this first year. And I want to apologize in advance because we have a lot to cover. I would like to begin by thanking our co-chairs, Charles Perry and Benoit Archambault. Also would like to recognize Michelle Faladou. Michelle, please, I hope I pronounced that correctly. It has been, really want to thank you all for your hard work over the past 11 months. It has been quite an extensive program, and we're very grateful for your dedication. I would also like to thank our international organization coordinators, Bryce Pardo and Hernan Epstein. They have been great collaborators over these months, and we are grateful for all of the support across the coalition, including helping us identify speakers, organize these calls, and overall advance the coalition's work. Today's theme for the coalition are those of evaluation and transition or sustainability. What do I mean? Now that we are coming to a close of the first year of the coalition, given the diverse membership of the coalition, we need to look at how we transition to a new phase that is more manageable and easier to organize. We come from so many different backgrounds, so many different professions, that to really start to make progress at the next phase of the coalition, we need to find a way that we can manage the work better. I think in the second year, our success will be measured very specifically by the outcomes of the actions and the initiatives that we are going to undertake. And so I will discuss that in just a moment. If I could get the next slide. So first, I'd like to cover some of our accomplishments to highlight just how far we have come these past 11 months. The ministerial meeting that launched the coalition took place on July 7th of 2023. That was just a few days after I joined the team, and I can't believe it's been well over a year now. It demonstrated the high-level political commitment to address synthetic drug threats. That was a call to action by the top leaders of our countries. That high-level interest really instilled in us a sense of urgency, a focus that has led to the very productive meetings that we have held over the past 11 months. The slide outlines some of these accomplishments. We were able to develop a network of over 1,600 government representatives from 158 countries. We were all united with this common purpose to find practical solutions to address these threats that are manifested by synthetic drugs. In total, by the end of the September sessions, we will have engaged in 148 hours of virtual meetings with interpretation over the past year to understand the problem, to exchange experiences, and to share opportunities and discuss new ideas. In May, we worked together to identify 68 recommendations across all of the sub-working groups. We had in-person meetings with co-chairs in Italy for Working Group 2 and from Greece for all the working groups. And these working group meetings, we discussed the various priority initiatives. There was a realization from those meetings that this issue is going to require continued and intensified cooperation, as well as funding and resources for many years to come. This is not something that is an acute issue that is solved. It is a chronic issue that is getting worse, that requires the attention of the international community and new responses, new ways and new strategies of addressing that drug phenomenon. To summarize this slide, what we have done this past year
We focused on building our car, building that infrastructure. But now comes the time to start utilizing it. We need to start test driving, and we are ready to start moving forward in these initiatives. It has taken a year, but it is the scope, the intensity of our work, the extensive nature of the subjects that we have covered that really did require so much intensity that nearly 150 hours of these Zoom calls required. I really want to once again thank sincerely all of your dedication, participation, and endurance for what I know has been a lot of time given everyone's busy schedules. But it was a meaningful exercise, and we very much appreciate your collaboration. Could we go to the next slide? We have established new networks as a result of the coalition. On the health side, developing the Global Recovery Network, the Global Women's Network, and the International Consortium for Alternatives to Incarceration, or ICATI, to help move people from the criminal justice system into community-based treatment services. And we have a new network that will be coming in the future, INLAD, the International Network for Legislation on Drugs, to help fill some of the legislative gaps we are finding. Overall, we also have been raising awareness of the initiatives, 120 initiatives that have been promoted by international organizations. This is a great library, a great resource that the international organizations, 15 of them, have provided us. It includes everything from intelligence information sharing platforms to training programs and capacity building opportunities. We have seen that coalition participants have used these initiative pages that we have on our website to express interest to the international organizations and their participation in these activities. I would like to raise the issue of donors. Here I will mention INL, have referred to these initiatives for developing funding support packages for the coming year. We are looking specifically at about 30 initiatives that we want to support from that many of the initiatives for the coming year, and have really oriented our programming in INL at the U.S. State Department to support global coalition initiatives, almost exclusively for this coming year. Next slide, please. So what is left to accomplish? As I've mentioned, we have built the car, now we need to drive it. We need to operationalize the actions and initiatives that we have been discussing, both in the recommendations as well as the initiatives page, as well as through presentations we have been listening to over the past few months. There are 3 lines of effort we would like to propose going forward in the coalition after September. First is to look at having collective meetings or groupings of coalition partners. One that we are looking at is a donors conference for donor states to be able to coordinate the assistance that they are already providing and to take stock of additional needs that the international community is facing, so that we are aware of what we are contributing and what still yet needs to be contributed. Second, we are considering a thought leaders conference. This idea will be bringing together academia, think tanks, but also policymakers, bringing research, policy, and practice together and helping look at a forecast of where the field is going. Excuse me. Where synthetic drugs may pose a greater risk in the future, what the patterns are looking like so we can try to undermine and address some of those challenges that we find internationally. So that is something we are also looking at. We are generally looking at pushing that activity off until next year. And we can think of other meetings where the coalition may come together. We do not envision that we will continue to have these monthly meetings, but we can have specific meetings at specific times, and we look forward to your feedback in terms of recommendations. We are also considering regional meetings organized by international organizations or regional organizations to help us understand the dynamics and have countries from regions come together. We are already looking forward to a Middle East drug dialogue, which will take place October 15th and 16th in Hungary. We are looking at the African Union assembling supply reduction focal points in Madagascar and demand reduction focal points in Tanzania later this year. We are looking forward to Pacific Island meetings, one for demand and one for supply. The Organization of American States is helping us in arranging meetings also for the Western Hemisphere. And UNODC, as in past years, supports the convening of Central Asian drug authorities. And I am sure there will be other meetings with European governments and/or North American governments as well. So the world is coming together on regional forums to look at regional dynamics and how to best address them. And finally, I would like to say we're looking at lines of action for the second year. What does this mean? Well, by September, we're hoping to have the reports from the sub-working group co-chairs to the working group co-chairs. We're looking at very specific and concrete initiatives and actions that we can then form smaller groups or groups of interested countries to then carry forward as part of programs, initiatives that go forward. And so if your country or if you as an individual within your government is interested in participating in some of these, the next months will give you an opportunity to identify those and then join these moving forward. Next slide, please. Just a friendly reminder that the website will remain the organizational platform for the work that we are doing. So we will be posting calendars, opportunities, and we will be explaining what these lines of action are moving forward. I would like to give a couple of examples where we can help illustrate what some of this might look like. We can use the legislative network I mentioned earlier, INLAD, as a potential example. So what might a year look like for a participating parliamentarian and or their staffer? In October, UNODC plans to conduct its initial launch, with OAS-CCAD subsequently launching several weeks later, the pilot for the Western Hemisphere. If your government or an individual within the government is interested, you might express that interest to participate in the October meetings. Now, I just want to be clear, the outline that we're going to provide is purely for hypothetical purposes and does not reflect the actual plan. We just want to be able to provide something easy to follow in this presentation today. Let's say in December, we might have an in-person meeting that identifies priority for legislative development. For example, it might be class-wide scheduling. That might be something that the legislators might want to take up and share sample legislation on. So from January to June, staffers of their respective countries could finalize and work with their legislator to introduce a bill. That legislation could be adapted, and we could have an outcome by July or August that would say, we had this many number of draft laws or bills that were considered for approval, and then we had this number of draft laws or bills that were actually passed. The outcome, the action impact is that we have drug control architecture that is stronger as a result of this program. Another initiative, the first one was the red one on the slide. The second one is the green arrow on the slide. I would give an example is the generic development of a training program for law enforcement supply reduction professionals. We could identify participants, collect some baseline data, such as what is their success or impact. We could conduct training that includes mentoring and technical assistance, and at a later time have an assessment of impact as a result of this training environment. So these are basic but illustrative examples of what actions and initiatives might look like that we could pursue moving forward in the coming year. You might find one or more of these of interest, so we encourage you or others, other experts you may designate to participate moving forward. So if we can go to the final slide, I'm going to stop talking. Thank you for your patience. I know that was a lot of information to pass. I want to thank you all again for your collaboration. I turn it over to our co-chairs, Charles and Benoit. I would turn it over to either of you. Thank you both. Thank you, everyone.
All right, so thanks a lot, Craig, for that great introduction. Actually, that will set a table for the next step for us today, because we're going to make the link between the meeting we had in Thessaloniki in June with the presentation of today. So that's a great introduction. So once again, my name is Benoit Chambaud. I'm from Health Canada here located in Montreal, Canada. So I'm alongside with my co-chair from South Africa, Dr. Charles Perry, who will join us. Actually, will take the floor a little bit later on. Sarah, I see you camera open. Do you have something to say first, or you want to jump in, or?
No, just saying hi. Hi, y'all. Thank you all. I'll chime in later.
Perfect. Hi, Sarah. All right. So we all have a busy agenda today, as usual. We have a great presentation later on, a joint presentation actually from Canada. So just before we jump there, I just want maybe and use that as a segue with what Greg just said, but just to come back a little bit from the face-to-face meeting we had in Thessaloniki in June. We have a very valuable and grateful session of 2 days with all of the sub-work committee members. It was a great time. I think we worked very, very hard, and we've been able at the end of that session to come up with kind of a plan, actually with an idea of where we want to move forward as the next step. I don't know if I can share my screen. I probably can. Here we go. I hope you can see it. You probably already have seen that that one pager that we use at the session, at the last session in Thessaloniki when Simona presented the work for us. So give me a thumbs up, Sarah, if you see it. Yeah, all right. What the hell? Okay. All right, so I guess you can see it. So it's just a kind of an overview of what we've discussed. We tried to put it in a one pager, very visual one pager. So we came with a kind of a 3 big pillar: improving the availability of credibility of data. We have the centerpiece, which is sharing new trends to the right people at the right time. So that's the segue with the presentation we're gonna have today in order to how we can address some data gaps, how we can collect information, how can we use early warning system in every jurisdiction, stuff like that, how we can build a drug observatory, and to be able to build that kind of big piece, we need actually little pieces to come together to be able to gather that information from different sources. And finally, the third one, trigger appropriate policy response. All that together, of course, in order to identify gaps, need to create strong network. Like Greg said, that's one of the things we will work on moving forward in the next year, to create those networks, to be able to talk the same language, and to be able to meet and to have the car running, and not just building the car, but to have the car hitting the road and running. So so I hope you had the time to look at this and to get back to the web page, the coalition web page. I'm pretty sure, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure that page is probably already posted there, so you can refer to it, and for any other stuff that we have worked on and you can rely on. So without further ado, I will stop sharing. How can I do that? Actually, I'm normally using Teams and oh, here, stop sharing. So Zoom for me is something different. So, and I will jump directly with the presentation for today, because we are already 20 minutes at a time. So we have a joint presentation today from Canada, actually. Two speakers, one from Health Canada, who is Stephanie Lessard. She's a specialist with the Health Canada Drug Analysis Service, working in the lab here in Health Canada. And she's accompanied with Pam Kent, Director of Research at the Canadian Centre for Drug Use and Addiction. So if you can open your camera and join, and I guess you probably have a presentation to share as well. So the floor is yours. The title of the presentation is Monitoring Drug Use Pattern Through Drug Checking Network.
Thank you, Benoit. Let me share my screen. Please let me know if you see everything correctly. By thumbs up, Benoit.
Yeah, I can see it very nice.
Perfect, thank you. So good morning, everyone. Today you will be attending a joint presentation, like Benoit said, by the Canadian Centre on Substance Use and Addiction and the Health Canada Drug Analysis Services. We will be discussing how a strong drug checking network can help in monitoring emerging drug threats and use patterns. I am pleased to tell you that the first part of today's presentation will be done by Dr. Pam Ken, the Director of Research Division at the CCSA. And today, Pam will be presenting the National Drug Checking Working Group, their activities, as well as the work informed by the group and how it ties to the Canadian Epidemiology Network on Drug Use. And for the second part of the presentation, you'll have me, a chemist and a laboratory specialist for the Health Canada Drug Analysis Services. I am part of the research and science development team involved in projects related to the opioid crisis and drug abuse, as well as innovative approaches for drug analysis. And today I will be describing how the work we do in Health Canada supports the drug checking community, as well as our health partner. Now, without further ado, the floor is yours, Dr. Kent, if you're there.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Can everybody hear me?
I can.
Okay, excellent. Okay, hello everyone. So I'm very pleased to be here today to talk to you about the National Drug Checking Working Group, which is a pan-Canadian drug checking community of practice that's coordinated by the CCSA in collaboration with another group in Canada called the Drug Resource and Education Project. So there's more and more drug checking services that are coming online in Canada, but it's still hard to get a national picture of drug trends. They all use different technologies. They have their own practices for data collection and reporting, and are also in different stages of development. So this working group really provides an important platform for regular knowledge exchange. So it makes it possible to get a sense of the national data landscape and get timely input about emerging and concerning new substances. Next slide, please. Thank you. Perfect. So this slide just gives just a demographic overview of the National Drug Checking Working Group. So right now we have 66 active members that are representing 47 organizations in 9 of the provinces and territories. So that's shown displayed on the map on the right. And then on the left, you can see the members that represent various sectors, so 8 sectors in total. And really, it's the community-based services that are at the heart of this group. And there's 21 of the organizations in the group that directly provide drug checking services. So this gives us access to timely information on findings and trends. So the National Drug Checking Working Group really is unique in Canada in terms of both its reach as well as its multi-sectoral membership. Next slide, please. So this slide really just gives you an idea of some of the activities conducted by the National Drug Checking Working Group. So they meet monthly, where the members will provide information on national trends and emerging new substances. There's comparison across geography and over time, and then on how newly identified substances affect service user. So this helps to inform CCSA's monitoring and surveillance work and drives decisions about our work, which I'll get into on the next couple of slides. The group also moves the national conversation on drug checking forward through in-person meetings. We had one meeting last fall and are currently planning another meeting for this fiscal year. Another advantage of this group is that its composition includes some of the most important voices in drug checking in Canada. So through this platform, we're able to provide what we call drug checking office hours. So this is where we leverage the expertise of the group to answer questions anyone in Canada can have about any aspect on drug checking. We were also able to conduct an environmental scan to paint the picture of drug checking service needs and barriers in Canada. This work, the environmental scan, contributed to a Pan-American survey of drug checking services. So in 2022, before we collaborated with the US researchers who conducted the survey, there were 4 Canadian services that participated. after we began to collaborate and provided access to the drug checking working group, the number jumped to 28. Next slide, please. So beyond a knowledge exchange platform, the group has also informed an increasing number and variety of CCSA products. So this is one example. This was a report that we published in 2020 on adulterants in the Canadian drug supply. So data sources for this report included Health Canada's Drug Analysis Service, Canada Border Service Agency, as well as the drug checking working group. And it was through input from the drug checking working group that we were able to develop these two infographics that you see on the left of the screen that communicate the extent of drug supply contamination in a way that was intuitive for the public. So it's showing all the substances drug checking services were finding in samples submitted to them as either opioids or stimulants. Next slide, please. So the drug checking working group has also become a key contributor to the Canadian Community Epidemiology Network on Drug Use, known as CENDU. And this is a group or a network that CCSA also coordinates. It's a sentinel surveillance network that publishes alerts and bulletins that are aimed at policymakers and service providers. So the drug checking working group has really become one of the main drivers of alert topics for both the alerts and bulletins that focus on the content of the unregulated drug supply. So there is an animation on the screen. If you just click, you can see some of the alerts and bulletins over time. So either on COVID-19 impact on the unregulated supply, non-regulated or non-medical benzodiazepines, nitazines, and then the final one, xylazines. So really, this work has allowed us to inform government officials at all levels, as well as public health professionals and service providers about emerging and concerning new drugs being found in the supply. And then my final slide, can go to the next slide. So this group is also contributing significantly to a new CENDU output, which is a monthly newsletter. So this initiative just actually started last month with the release of our first newsletter. So each newsletter focuses on one specific topic, and the drug checking working group really is a significant driver of the topic each month. They provide both data and contextual information. Again, this one's got an animation which kind of shows the different data pieces within the newsletter. So we have reports from the CENDU sites. Thanks to Health Canada, we have the Health Canada Drug Analysis Services data, and then the drug checking data. And really, right now, this is the only place where a national snapshot of drug checking findings is available in Canada. We're actually going to be working with Public Health Agency of Canada to more formally try to harmonize drug checking data. Also mentions in the media and social media. And then finally, just the contextual piece, which is so important in terms of what the information means to different communities. With that, I will turn it back over to Stephanie. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. That was very informative. Now switching gear to the Health Canada, as mentioned previously, today we will be presenting how that supports the drug checking community and our health partner. Now in Canada, the toxicity of the drug supply continues to be one of the main drivers of the overdose crisis and affects community and families across Canada. Part of our Health Canada mandate is to document changes in the illicit drug supply and provide timely information to our partner. To briefly describe the laboratory operation, the Drug Analysis Services and Cannabis Lab run 4 laboratories across Canada. Our database is centralized and contains over 3 million record and historical data from 1988 onward. And we analyze approximately 100,000 samples each year received from 1,500 law enforcement departments and 32 public health partners. Now, in terms of harm reduction activities for the research group I am part of within DAS, our flagship program is providing support to our community health partners that offer drug checking services to people who use drugs in order to reduce harm associated with the toxicity of the unregulated drug supply. Sorry, there's a bit of a delay when I'm switching slides. There we go. Okay, so the most important activity our research program is doing is to provide confirmatory analysis to community-based drug checking services. It's a comprehensive, detailed, and whenever possible, quantitative analysis of drug present in samples. We provide a rapid flow of quality information generated using a combination of cutting-edge and state-of-the-art technology like the one shown on the slide, NMR, GCMS, GCFTIR, HPLC, QTOF. And each year, we analyze roughly 1,000 samples from health partners and community groups across Canada. Our turnaround time is roughly 10 days, which positions ourselves closer to the supply chain and help in providing timely information to our partner. We do analysis on samples that have already been analyzed in the field by a healthcare worker, but not all of them. We focus on samples that are associated with overdose, samples of unknown composition and or complex mixture. And one of the reasons why we do confirmatory analysis is that we can help the community group understand the technology that they are using and its limits. Now, this is important because often the trade-off for having a rapid, cost-effective, and easy technology on site is sometimes missing or incomplete information. For example, you could be missing information when a substance is found below the limit of detection of an instrument, or when a closely related analog cannot be distinguished. For example, when you have fentanyl, methylfentanyl, and fluorofentanyl. One other thing is it is also important to note that we can identify new substance of interest or new psychoactive substances, if you wish, by using the suite of instruments shown on this slide. Now, this is true even when there is no reference material commercially available. And more importantly, once the NPS has been identified, we can provide the library data file to our partner, and they can in turn warn their network that a new substance has been detected. Finally, I would like to also mention that by identifying NPS in confirmatory analysis samples, our work can help inform policymakers about new threats. To summarize this slide, by doing confirmatory analysis, we help the community groups build and strengthen their laboratory capacity, but we also help build and support the scientific knowledge in the drug checking community. Now, let me quickly present a case study where our work helped the drug checking community identify a methylfentanyl analog with a potency that was similar to that of fentanyl. Now, last year, in October 2023, some of our community health partners started observing a new methylfentanyl analog. However, the virus technologies used by our partner were not able to unambiguously differentiate between the three closely potential structures. Now, I know the audience is not all chemists, so I'm just going to point out in red where the methyl position could be in this case. So the community group, they reached out to us for help in order to solve this problem. Now, it's important to note that the different structures could mean different biological activities and pharmacological profile. Now, knowing the exact structure is relevant from a health perspective, but also from a policymaker point of view. So using the, sorry, there's an animation here, using the sample coming from our confirmatory analysis program and analyzing them using our instruments, our group was able to put an end to the questioning and unambiguously determine that the new analog found in our partner's sample was the orthomethylfentanyl. Now, in this case, the leadership for disseminating the information across the network goes to the Toronto Drug Checking Services. But the present case study showcases how our analytical work plays a critical role in supporting harm reduction initiative, especially in the context of the ever-growing complexity in the unregulated drug supply. This story also highlights the importance for a multidisciplinary team and how a network of different stakeholders can help reduce harm associated with substance use by quickly addressing a problem and disseminating the information. Now, this last slide for me represents the various other scientific projects that the Health Canada Drug Analysis Services also does to support our health partner. For example, we have co-authored some publication on the use of xylazine test strips on drug samples used at point of care, detection of novel designer benzodiazepine in drug samples, or the assessment of the limit of detection of the instrument used for drug checking in point of care. We also have worked behind the scene on the Health Canada Drug Checking Technology Challenge. There was a challenge launched by the Government of Canada to help develop innovative drug checking technologies. We are doing confirmatory analysis for samples coming from music festivals in Canada to help understand the portrait of substance analyzed by drug checking group, but in different settings. And last but not least, we are currently building a training sample program for community-based drug checking services. And our goal is to provide a non-testing sample, different mixture to drug checking sites so that they can confirm and ascertain limitation of their analysis and also ensure the accuracy of their results. To summarize, we have showcased that performing drug checking is essential for informing about the contents of the unregulated drug supply. It also enables early warning system and allows for timely dissemination of information. We've demonstrated that confirmatory analysis can help build and support scientific knowledge, as well as strengthen forensic capacity to identify trends, which ultimately helps triggering appropriate policy response. And to conclude, it is through a strong network of various stakeholders, ranging from forensic specialists to healthcare service provider and national knowledge mobilization efforts, that a truly comprehensive approach to face emerging drug threats and use patterns becomes possible. Now, with this, we've reached the end of the presentation. I thank you for your time, and we are happy to answer any questions you may have. Gonna unshare my screen.
Thank you both. I'm Charles Perry, one of the other work group leads in this area with Benoit. And I really thank you for that presentation, which shows very clearly the intersection between community networks, community epi networks, and forensic services. Sometimes we tend to see them operating quite distinctly. So for me, that was wonderful to see that, because I modeled my South African network after the CSENDU network about 28, 29 years ago. And we're trying this, but you seem to be doing it quite successfully. It's been a while since we did drug checking. So thank you for that presentation. We've got great time for questions. So thank you both for keeping to time and for such a clear presentation. Before I take general questions, and if you don't feel like speaking, you can put them in the chat. We can take them there as well. I'm going to ask, we have at least one of our work group chairs with us. I see Grant Baldwin is here from the CDC, and we usually give them a chance to ask questions first. Grant, do you have any comments you'd like to make or a question?
Excellent. Good evening, good morning from Washington, D.C. We welcome you again to our August sub-working group sessions. Just a reminder, next month in September, we will regroup as a whole of all 3 working groups together. Please check the website for more information on there. And now I am going to dive in to share our administrative announcements. Ooh, Emma, are you able to? Oh, there you go. Thanks. Perfect. Yeah, we can go to the next one. Awesome. So first, I really want to begin by thanking our co-chairs for all of their work over the last 11 months. Jenny, Amy, Diego, Claire. It's been quite an intensive program, and we are so grateful for your dedication. We would not be able to do all of this without you. And additionally, with our international coordinators, Hernan Epstein and Bryce Pardo. Hernan has actually moved on to a new position, but we need to acknowledge all of their help. They've been great collaborators over the last few months. So we're very grateful for their support. Everyone's helped identify speakers, organize the calls, and just advance the coalition's work overall. So we're very grateful. So the theme for today's meeting revolves around monitoring, evaluation, and transitioning for stability. because now that we're coming to a close on the first year of the coalition, and we have such a diverse membership, and we need to look to how we can move into a next phase that is honestly more manageable and easier to organize and targeted. We come from so many backgrounds and so many different professions, so that to really start to make progress in this next phase, we need to find a way to coordinate and develop a different organization of lines of effort to be very outcome oriented. So in this second year, we're measuring the coalition's work specifically through outcomes of the actions and the initiatives that we'll undertake, which I'll come back to in a moment. Go to the next slide, Emma dear. So let's think a bit about what the coalition's already accomplished. If you think back all the way to July, the ministerial that launched the coalition, it demonstrated the high level of political commitment to addressing synthetic drug threats, and top leadership in over 80 countries answered this call to action. It instilled a sense of urgency and a focus that has led to these very productive meetings over the past 11 months. And so in this slide, we're just going to outline some of these accomplishments. So currently, there are over 1,600 government representatives from 158 countries and 15 international organizations as participating in the coalition, all united with a common purpose to find practical solutions. Also, in total, by the end of the September sessions, we will have engaged in 148 hours of virtual meetings with interpretation in 7 different languages, so that we could all, no matter what language we speak, understand the problem, exchange experiences, share opportunities, and discuss new ideas. And also, if you remember, in May, we worked together to identify the 68 recommended areas of work across all different sub-working groups, and the compilation of roughly 120 initiatives to act on those recommendations. And then we also had in-person meetings with the Working Group 2 co-chairs in Italy and also in Greece with all the co-chairs. And we thank you all. It was really great to meet in person. During those meetings, there was a realization that the issue of synthetic drugs is going to require continued and intensified cooperation, as well as funding and resources for many years to come. Because we know that it's not an acute issue that is solved, it's chronic, and it continues to get worse in a lot of areas. So this requires the continued attention of the international community, development of new responses, and strengthened ways and strategies to address the drug phenomenon. So in sum, this past year, we focused on building the car, or building the plane, building the infrastructure. But now it comes time to start driving the car, flying the plane. The many hours of meetings have shown the scope and the intensity of work to be done, and the extensive nature of these subjects, which requires that much intensity. So we really want to, again, sincerely thank you all for your dedication, participation, and endurance for 148 hours of meetings and all the work that comes with that, because we know it's a lot of time given your busy schedules, and it's been a meaningful exercise, and we really appreciate your collaboration. So thank you. Go to the next one. So also thinking about accomplishments, just a few, and there's many as the action reports come in. It is astonishing to see how much work has been done over the past year. But yeah, as a sample, we've established new networks. In June, on the health side, the Global Recovery Network, Global Women's Network, and the International Consortium for Alternatives to Incarceration were launched, and will help move people from the criminal justice system into community-based treatment services. And then we'll also have a new network that will be coming in the future, the International Network for Legislation on Drugs, or INLAD, which will help fill some of the legislative and policy gaps that have been identified. Also on this note, in a previous session, 1.2 on trafficking, our co-chair Michal Alexandrowicz referenced the great work that their program in Poland, Impact, has been doing. They integrated in their operational action plan the coalition's work in terms of increasing information sharing and capacity building. They recently did a training in Mongolia that they reported on. So it's just wonderful to see how much work has been going on. Because on another sense too, we've been raising the profile of the many methods of addressing synthetic drugs. So the 120 initiatives that international organizations have compiled that span from intelligence information sharing platforms, training programs, capacity building opportunities, and more. And we've seen coalition participants expressing interest through the website. And so it shows that this is landing and this is working. With that, I'd like to raise the issue of donors and developing funding support packages for the coming year. In terms of INL, we are looking specifically at about 30 initiatives that we'll want to support from the menu of actions. And we've really oriented our programming to support the Global Coalition almost exclusively for the coming year. Next slide, please. So what is left? What happens now? As I mentioned, we built the car and now we need to get it moving. So we need to operationalize all that we've been discussing. And to do that, there's 3 lines of effort that we'd like to propose going forward in the coalition after September. So on one side are collective meetings and groupings of coalition partners. One thing that we're looking at doing is a donors conference to coordinate assistance that is already being provided towards the issue and also take stock of additional needs so that we can be aware of what's already being contributed and what needs to be contributed as well. Second, we are considering a thought leaders conference as an activity for next year. This idea would be to convene academia, think tanks, and also policymakers, bringing research, legislation, and just practice together to help look at a forecast of where the field is going, where synthetic drugs may pose a greater risk in the future, and then what patterns are looking like so we can kind of be proactive and address challenges ahead of time. So that is something we're looking at. And so while these monthly meetings may wind down, we're still going to be reconvening. The coalition continues on, but in a more targeted fashion. Additionally, there are regional meetings organized by international organizations or regional partners to help understand the dynamics and have various countries all come together. We're already looking forward to a Middle East drugs dialogue, which will take place October 15th and 16th in Hungary. The African Union will be assembling supply reduction focal points in Madagascar and then demand reduction focal points in Tanzania later this year. And then we're also looking forward to Pacific Island meetings on a similar model, one for demand, one for supply. And then also the Organization of American States is helping the coalition in arranging meetings for the Western Hemisphere, and UNODC, as in past years, is supporting the convening of the Central Asian drug authorities. And of course, there are going to be many other meetings from the North African governments and European governments. And the real thing is the world is coming together in these different forums to look at the different dynamics, and the coalition can be a part of that. Finally, I would like to say that we're looking at different lines of action for the second year. So what does this mean? By September, we are hoping to have reports from sub-working groups and working groups on specific and concrete initiatives or actions that can then form smaller groups or groups of interested countries on a particular line of effort. So if it's strengthening drug observatories or strengthening early warning systems, a group of countries each kind of within those kind of subject-specific work streams rather than the kind of larger scope sub-working groups that we've been in so far. So if your country or if you as an individual within your government is interested in participating in some of these work streams to carry forward the recommendations, please join the meetings next month. Feel free to email so that we can identify those and kind of move forward together. Thank you. So in year 2, the website will remain the organizing platform for the work that we're doing. We're actually adding in some new information. We'll be posting a calendar that will highlight different coalition related activities, whether hosted by the coalition or under the umbrella of the coalition. The website will be the place to go. In terms of specific initiatives, I have a couple examples that can illustrate what carrying this forward might look like over year 2. So coming back to the legislative network I mentioned earlier, INLAD, what it might, the next year might look like is for a participating parliamentarian and or their staffers. So in October, UNODC plans to conduct its initial launch with OSCE CAD, subsequently launching the pilot for the Western Hemisphere. If you or if your government or you as an individual within the government is interested, you can express interest to participate in October. And also this is kind of hypothetical right now as things are getting hashed out. So it's not the actual plan yet, but it is a general idea. So yeah, in December, there could be an in-person meeting that identifies priorities for legislative development, for example, class-wide scheduling that legislators might want to take up and share sample legislation on. And then from January to June, staffers in their respective countries could finalize and work with their legislators to introduce a bill. Then that legislation could be adapted and we could have an outcome by July or August that would show a number of draft laws or bills that were considered for approval or the number passed to show how drug control architecture is becoming stronger through these efforts. A second example could be around kind of general development of a training program for law enforcement on the drug demand reduction side. And through that timeline, it's identifying participants, collecting some baseline data, such as their success or impact, and then conducting a training that includes mentoring or technical assistance, and then at a later time, having an assessment of that income impact as a result of the training. So these are basic but illustrative examples of what actions and initiatives in year 2 might look like. You might find one or more of these of interest, so we encourage you or other experts you may designate to participate moving forward. So that was a lot of information, and now I'm going to stop speaking, and I'm going to pass it over to our co-chairs, Jenny and Diego, and I think, I'm not sure if Amy's online, but Jenny and Diego, you can take it away.
Gracias, Sara. Bueno, un saludo muy especial para todas y todos desde Bogotá, Colombia. Reiteramos entonces el saludo al subgrupo de trabajo 2.2 sobre intercambio de información, colaboración interinstitucional y formulación de políticas. En seguimiento a la presentación de Sara, continuamos con el desarrollo de la agenda prevista para este encuentro el día de hoy. En primer lugar, entre las dos presentaciones adicionales que tenemos en primer lugar la de descripción general del modelo operativo de la Agencia de Drogas de la Unión Europea, a cargo de Paul Griffin, director científico de la Agencia de Drogas de Europa. Le damos la palabra a Paul.
Thank you, Jenny. Can you hear me?
Sí, te escuchamos bien.
I'm going to share my screen. Can I ask, are you seeing my presentation in presenter's view now?
We sure do.
Sí, la vemos.
That's remarkable. The technology appears to be working for once. Thank you. What I've been asked to do this afternoon, sorry, is to briefly reflect on some of the challenges we are facing in responding to contemporary drug problems in Europe. I'm going to look at how these challenges are addressed in the new operational model for the EUDA, that's the European Union Drugs Agency, and how this differs a little bit from the old EMCDDA, that's the former agency that the EUDA has now replaced. And I want to focus and say a little bit few words on the implications of these developments for information sharing, interagency collaboration, and supporting policy formation.
So just to give you a very brief historical context, the EMCDDA came into existence in 1993, operational from 1995 in Lisbon, Portugal. And really our initial focus was on data standardization and data harmonization, with, I guess, the idea of creating a common language to allow a more informed EU-wide empirical dialogue and policy debate on drug problems. And very much at that time, I think the main policy driver, the issue that was causing most concern was heroin use. Heroin epidemics were impacting on many countries, injecting drug use and related problems like HIV and hepatitis infections. From around the mid-90s, after the emergence of MDMA, I think there was also then a recognition that we could see new uncontrolled substances appearing, and really that prompted the recognition of the need to develop an early warning system, a rapid reporting and response model. And from that came into existence the early warning system on new psychoactive substances, which allowed for the possibility of fast track for control of new substances across the EU. And I think when I reflect on what's happened over the last 20 or 30 years or so in terms of the EMCDDA's life, we've seen policy concerns evolving over time. Security issues have grown in importance. They were always included in our regulation, but initially the data sources we looked at were more health focused. There's more emphasis on the need for timely and sensitive information sources. That's grown over time. There's a greater focus on a wider range of substances, including stimulants and synthetic drugs. And more recently, after COVID, we've started to incorporate futures and foresights approaches into our work. And you can see a lot of that in the new regulation for the EUDA that became operational from July 2024, so just a month ago. And when we look at the EUDA regulation, I think you can see that it's, in my mind, it recognizes the fact that the world has changed and is changing rapidly in ways that have important implications for the drugs area. Globalization and digitalization has transformed all areas of modern life. So I guess it's not surprising they also impact on drug production and use. I also think there's a concern about increasingly what some people have described as a perma-crisis. We're certainly living in a more uncertain and insecure world. And I think the reflection that post-COVID, that the past may not always be such a good predictor of the future. In many countries, there's a distrust of experts. We're seeing considerable political, social, and environmental instability. And all these changes have consequences for an information agency operating in the drug space. And I think if we put those together, I think one of the key observations is the drug situation become much more dynamic and more complex than it was in the past. And that as has the task of providing evidence to inform policies and actions from agencies involved in supporting responses to drug issues. And we see that because the drug market has become much more digitally enabled. We see criminal groups quick to innovate and exploit new technologies to reduce risks and create new opportunities for their business models. We see patterns of drug consumption can change now very rapidly, can and do change very rapidly, and we need to keep pace with this. We see synthetic drugs and polydrug use consumption patterns becoming much, much more important. I think they will continue to be even more important in the future. So we need tools that fit the purpose to allow us to monitor developments in a timely manner and respond effectively. The drug market is now much more globally connected, exploiting weaknesses in governance, differences in jurisdictions, and the opportunities created by developments in commercial infrastructure. And that all means when we put that together that new drug trends can rapidly transcend geographic boundaries in a way that just simply wasn't the case in the past. And what are the implications of all this for the EUDA, the agency I work for? Well, it creates a need for more rapid information to inform policies and actions. It means we need to have a much more global perspective and learn and work with others. We need to recognize that technological developments also don't just create challenges, but also create new possibilities and opportunities for timely data collection and the development of effective interventions. Post-COVID, I think there's a greater recognition of the need to anticipate and pivot rapidly to address new policy and operational challenges. And I think globally and at the EU level, there's a growing recognition also of the need for a new science for policy ecosystem to work a bit differently. And that's got to be built on co-production and partnership. And I'm thinking a little bit of some of the ideas that are coming out of the Global Commission on Evidence and our Joint Research Centre in the EU, and also some of the work in the Commission science programmes. And if I reflect a little bit, what are the specific challenges, thinking about the real focus of our work here for the EUDA resulting from the increased availability and use of synthetic drugs, well, we're faced with monitoring an ever-changing and growing list of substances, mixtures and chemicals. Self-report data, and that's something we've relied on heavily in the past, has become ever less useful. Often people simply don't know the drugs they're consuming or may be misinformed about what they've been using. We also need to invest in approaches that can perform better in monitoring and responding to polydrug use consumption patterns. And we've been very bad about that in the past. We've tended to look at drugs in isolation, single substances, but we know many of the policy and health problems they cause come from the interactions that exist between drugs, either in the market or when they're used together. And this means that we need greater forensic and toxicological capacity to monitor trends in availability and use. And we also, when we put this all together, we need an underlying information model that is not only scientifically robust and comprehensive, but it's also agile to detect efficiently emerging threats and is forward-looking. And I think if you look at our new regulation, you see it reflects this recognition that we're dealing with more complex problems, we need more timely information. And critically, we don't just need information, we need information that is useful, has utility for informing policies and actions. And you can see that right up at the front of the regulation, when it gives us our purpose, it's to provide the Union and its member states with factual, objective, reliable and comparable information. That's very much the task given to the EMCDDA. But now added emphasis is given to conducting early warning and risk assessments. We're asked to do that across a range of policy areas and concerns. And also, there's a much greater focus in the new regulation on recommending appropriate and concrete evidence-based actions. So it's not just collecting information, it's using that information to inform action. And we need to do that in an efficient and timely manner. And if you look at the regulation, it's built around 3 interlinked pillars. These are monitoring, preparedness, and competence development. And I think if you look at it in terms of overview, it's more proactive and timely. Our monitoring work is extended to include things like precursors, more attention to drug markets and their developments, best practices and policies. There's still the need to work on data harmonization and standardization, but it's given less emphasis. We're launching a new threat assessment and alert system with the exciting possibility to make recommendations for actions and then follow up to see if those recommendations have been implemented and if they've impacted on the problems we face. The early warning system for new psychoactive substances is extended now to all drugs. We're building regular futures and foresights exercises into our work programs. We need to also work on the development continue to work on the development more timely and rapid methods. And there's a much greater international focus, and that's in terms of both working with the international community to identify threats, but also in terms of capacity building and data sharing. I think the new regulation is also more holistic and comprehensive. There's much greater emphasis given to the identification, sharing, and importantly, supporting the implementation of evidence-based practices. We're given a new role in identifying research needs and knowledge gaps. For the first time, there's an explicit link to EU policy needs, supporting important policy documents like the EU Drugs Action Plan and Strategy and Action Plan, and the Security Strategy. And I think very exciting from my point of view, there's a new network of forensic and toxicological laboratories being established reflecting the challenges of polydrug use and the growing importance of synthetic drugs. And just to give you a little peek under the bonnet of all this, it sits on what I would describe as an integrated knowledge model for supporting evidence-informed responses in the drugs area. So if you look at that black line at the bottom, taking us from past, present, and future, very much we've got our monitoring, surveillance, asking the question, what has happened and what can we learn from that? But we build on top of that a layer of threat assessment and risk, early warning threat assessment, asking the question, I guess, what might be happening that could be important and what we may need to respond to. And now we also incorporate a layer of anticipatory science, foresights and futures work, asking the question, what might happen in the future? How do we act now to be better prepared for possible future challenges, to avoid negative futures, to pursue more positive future outcomes? And I think the important thing about this model in terms of it's all designed to increase EU preparedness and resilience, and it's very much reinforcing what we see is in terms of our futures and foresights and future challenges, informs the sorts of things we need to look for in terms of our early warning and threat assessment work. And the things we identify as potential threats, we also need to inform and strengthen our routine monitoring and surveillance tools. So it's very much a systemic and integrated information model that our work is built on. I just want to finally finish by saying a little bit about the international cooperation framework. This is still in preparation. We've only been in existence for a month. But I think when you look at it, you'll see it's really about us looking beyond the EU borders to support the external dimension of the EU's drug policy, promote the EU's balanced and evidence-based approach. I think it's intended to foster stronger collaborative ties with external partners, to work together collectively in partnership to identify cross-border threats and increase EU resilience and preparedness. It's also, but beyond that, it's intended to ensure more cohesive and comprehensive response across borders to promote safer and healthier communities worldwide. We recognize very much that the problems we face are shared ones. And we're looking also very specifically for greater efficiency in terms of data collection and recognizing the importance of investing in the co-production of knowledge with our international partners. And you'll see that a little bit reflected in terms of our strategic objectives. In terms of monitoring, we're looking to monitor developments of the international drugs phenomenon that might pose or threat or have implications for the EU. So looking outwards, we used to look the old EMCDDA, we very much looked just what was happening within Europe. We now also recognize in the modern world we have to look at or to essentially look at and respond to global threats. We want to, in terms of preparedness, cooperate closely with external partners and international organizations on drug-related threats emerging from outside the EU, which have the potential to impact on health and social matters, safety and security concerns within the EU. And in terms of competence development, we want to support the exchange and dissemination of best practices and implementable research results at the international level. And also develop technical cooperation with our external partners and international organizations and promote the incorporation of EU relevant data into internal monitoring drug control programs. So one of the things we've been talking about recently with the UNODC is, can we get more efficiency in terms of supporting the incorporation of EU data within international monitoring, particularly the data collected for the annual reports questionnaire and monitoring the implementation of the drug control conventions. And finally, just in terms of modalities of cooperation, there's a possibility to have working arrangements and associated work programs with partner countries. We already have existing, we'll be updating our working arrangements with international organizations. We have a wide range of tools for increasing in EU cohesion and working with our EU partners. But I just want to finish by just looking at this one on scientific communities and civil society organizations. We were forming a new civil society partnership to actually improve what we do in terms of our engagement with civil society. But also, if you look at this, we have this year the Lisbon Addictions Conference, and we're going to have both in that conference, but also in a number of side events, we're going to have a number of network meetings that very much, I think, take forward and support some of the goals and some of the objectives that we've discussed during our work with the Global Commission. Thank you very much for your attention. I'll stop sharing my screen now.
Muchas gracias, Paul, por la excelente presentación, muy interesante el tema. Queremos saber si hay preguntas, inquietudes o comentarios de parte de los participantes. Bueno, al parecer no. Agradecemos a Paul por la interesante presentación en la que nos hace como todo una descripción de la evolución que ha habido en el Observatorio Europeo de Drogas y Toxicomanías y su paso como Agencia de Drogas de Europa y este desarrollo en línea con el modelo operativo y lo que tiene que ver con las nuevas sustancias psicoactivas. Esto va a ser muy interesante para también los avances y las recomendaciones de la coalición global. Esperamos que hayan también más espacios para entrar mucho más en materia y conocer en detalle cada uno de estos temas que Paul nos comparte el día de hoy. Muchísimas gracias, Paul. Entonces seguimos con la siguiente presentación. Nuestra compañera Ami se encuentra, nuestra colega Ami de Reino Unido. Bueno, entonces parece que no le daría la palabra a mi colega Diego Sánchez para continuar con la agenda. Muchas gracias.
Como segunda componente de nuestro encuentro mensual, tenemos en este espacio una presentación por parte de Abel Basutu de la Unión Africana. En este espacio nos van a comentar sobre los esfuerzos de intercambio de información y colaboración interinstitucional de la Unión Africana. Abel, tienes el uso de la palabra. Gracias.
Partners, Excellencies, distinguished member state representatives, esteemed partners, Excellencies, I would like to thank INL, and we are indeed privileged to have this opportunity as the African Union to share brief information about two important forthcoming events in Africa. These are the African Union Global Coalition Continental Consultation on Drug Demand Reduction and the African Union Global Coalition Continental Consultation on Drug Supply Reduction. Just a word before I explain about these two events to mention that the African Union is an intergovernmental organization comprising all 55 countries on the continent of Africa. The first meeting that I want to highlight to you is the AU Global Coalition Continental Consultation on Drug Supply Reduction. It will take place from 22 to 25 October 2024 in Antananarivo, the capital of Madagascar, an island in the Indian Ocean. The specific objective or the overarching objective of this particular meeting is to review progress in the implementation of comprehensive and integrated strategies to address drug trafficking and related organized crime as outlined in the African Union Plan of Action on Drug Control and Crime Prevention for the period 2019 to 2025. And the specific objectives are to promote interagency collaboration and strengthen mechanisms for real-time intelligence exchange systems, to update on current trends regarding illicit drug trafficking in Africa with a special focus on synthetic drugs, to introduce technical experts to the supply reduction data collection tool of the Pan-African Epidemiology Network on Drug Use, which is the Continental Drug Surveillance Sentinel. fourthly, to discuss evaluation of the African Union Plan of Action on Drug Control and Crime Prevention 2019 to 2025, which is drawing to a close, and to brainstorm development of the next action plan. And it is to be noted that the Continental Drug Action Plan is the overarching framework that guides drug policy development on the continent of Africa. And lastly, to share, to provide opportunities to participants to share best practices, protocols, and drug policy frameworks to facilitate appropriate transnational organized crime data flows to agencies conducting screening and interdiction operations in member states. And who are the participants? We are expecting nominated drug supply reduction focal persons from national law enforcement agencies, police, customs, maritime security, etc., etc. We are also expecting collaborating organs of the African Union and specialized offices, for example, AFRIPOL, to attend that particular meeting, and partner organizations and agencies. Of course, INL, US State Department, UNODC, INCB, Interpol, Europol, the World Customs, etc., etc. And the working languages to be used in this particular meeting are English, Arabic, French, and Portuguese. The next meeting that I want to talk about is the African Union Global Coalition Continental Consultation on Drug Demand Reduction. And this one will take place 10 to 13 December 2024 in Arusha, Tanzania. And you can see the pictures that I put there. That picture is of Mount Kilimanjaro, which is the tallest or the highest mountain in Africa. That's Mount Kilimanjaro. And it's just a few kilometers from Arusha, the host city for this particular meeting. The objectives of this particular meeting, if I start with the overarching objective, which is to review progress in the implementation of drug demand reduction pillars of the African Union Plan of Action on Drug Control and Crime Prevention for the period 2019 to 2025. That framework does have drug demand reduction pillars. And the specific objectives are to enable participants, together with the Commission of the African Union, to validate a sub-regional action plan for traditional leaders in drug demand reduction. Number two, to hold a policy makers training for Southern Africa network of traditional leaders in drug demand reduction. And that training will be conducted by UNODC, specifically for this particular network of traditional leaders in drug demand reduction, to build their capacity and to widen the reach of interventions at community level, given the fact that many African countries are experiencing public health challenges due to increased availability and use of psychoactive substances. And therefore, we were requested by the policy organs of the African Union to incorporate traditional leaders who are recognized as first-line respondents in their communities, which are no longer insulated from these issues, unlike before. And the third is to review operationalization of national drug epidemiology systems And the fourth is to discuss evaluation of the AU Plan of Action on Drug Control and Crime Prevention for the period 2019. There was a mistake there, for the period 2019 to 2025, and to brainstorm development of the next action plan, and to discuss new trends in drug use. We are expecting, in terms of participation, we are expecting national drug demand reduction for focal persons. We are expecting people to come from the Ministries of Health, Ministries of Social Development, and we are also expecting national drug epidemiology focal persons from member states to attend. In terms of partner organizations as well, we are expecting, of course, INL, US State Department, UNODC, ISAP, ITTC, and others. And you are welcome. Those who wish to attend are welcome to contact us at the African Union Commission, and we can arrange. The working languages are Arabic, English, French, and Portuguese. And just to acknowledge the financial and technical backstopping that we are receiving from the INL, US State Department. And for further inquiries, further information, more information will be posted on the AU website, but you can write directly to myself, basutu@africa-union.org, or my colleague my colleagues on the emails that have been given in this particular slide. I want to once again take this opportunity to thank INL for giving us this opportunity to share some of our major forthcoming events. Thank you very much. We wish you can attend those particular meetings. Thank you very much.
Bueno, muchas gracias. Agradecemos la presentación excelente de Abel Basutu de la Unión Africana. Creo que ahí en la última diapositiva dejó registrado links de contacto, correos, porque pues creo que es una muy buena iniciativa que se enmarca en las actividades de la coalición. Nosotros los invitamos a que si tienen algún tipo de pregunta, comentario, pueden hacerlo a través del chat o levantar la mano para poder activar como este espacio de preguntas que tenemos. Aproximadamente tenemos unos 8 minutos para cualquier tipo de comentarios, observaciones al respecto a lo que se ha mencionado en este espacio. Nosotros, mientras tanto, teníamos como una pregunta para Paul, y es que, digamos, ya hablando